Indie racing games deserve more love and recognition. Yeah, you know where this is going. It's time to analyze an indie racing game. The indie racing game in question? Circuit Superstars.
Hi everyone, as always Patrick here. If you're already subscribed, make sure you turn on notifications, otherwise YouTube won't tell you if I posted anything. If you are new to the channel, make sure you watch until the very end and consider subscribing if you like it.
Okay, Circuit Superstars. Circuit Superstars was developed by Original Fire Games and published by Square Enix in 2021. And that's all I have to say about the developer and the publisher, so let's not waste any more time and let's talk about the graphics. This is one of those games with minimalistic graphics, and I have to say, despite the fact that this game has those minimalistic graphics, it actually looks pretty good. Original Fire Games clearly understood their assignment when creating this game. Graphically, it's very cute. All tracks, or should I say everything in this game, has this orange/purple lighting, and I have to say it really fits aesthetically. Everything in this game has high level of detail despite its minimalistic approach. You can easily notice it by looking at the trees. The trees in Circuit Superstars are always in motion and are never static. You could argue that it's always windy, but personally I just see it as a nice graphical touch. Also, I have to say, this game has the cutest pit stops I've ever seen. Just wanted to point that out. Sadly, I can't say the same thing about the graphical options the game gives you. I think Original Fire Games took the whole minimalistic approach too seriously because there's not a lot you can change in this game. To make things worse, you can't use PC Gaming Wiki for any potential fixes, so you're stuck with the options that the game gives you. Yes, you can run the game in widescreen resolutions and there are some graphical options you can change, but other than that, options are missing a lot of features. No anisotropic filtering, no FOV slider, etc. At least the game's stability is good. The game didn't crash, didn't stutter, didn't lag, but it suffers from an occasional frame drop. But that happens pretty rarely. So yeah, game pretty. Let's talk about the story. There is none, so let's talk about the gameplay. Circuit Superstars plays like a dinky real-life version of Micro Machines. Or it plays like Bang Bang Racing, if you remember that game. Also, as you would expect from a game titled Circuit Superstars, the game is mostly about circuit racing, and that's what you do in the game. You race on circuits. That's pretty self-explanatory. If you've been watching my analysis videos for a while, you know how we do things around here. First, let's talk about the damage model. The damage model exists, but it also doesn't exist. Let me explain. Take a look at the bottom left corner of the screen. What do you see? Yes, there's a health bar, so that means that there should be a damage model, right? Well, there is. Kind of. You can crash into objects or into walls or into other drivers as well, and it takes away your health bar, so you do take damage. However, there's no visual damage, or maybe I just didn't really notice it that much. When you damage your car a lot, or should I say when your health bar is somewhere around 30 HP or less, there is smoke coming out of your car, but that's pretty much it. From what I've noticed, the damage you take doesn't affect the handling and the physics at all, so I don't really know what's the point of this system. Okay, I'm joking, I know what this system is for. When your HP is depleted completely, or has depleted completely, should I say, you drive very slowly and you have to drive to the nearest pit stop to replenish your health and also refuel and change your tires, but more on those things later. Also, when your car has no health left, your opponents can use it to their advantage and easily overtake you since you drive incredibly slowly. So don't get damaged. Now let's talk about the physics. I have to say that I don't really know how I should approach this section because this is a top-down racer, as you can see, and personally I don't play a lot of top-down racers, so my knowledge in this aspect is lacking, to say the least. I'll still try though. Well, the physics are pretty good for a top-down racer. The cars in Circuit Superstars are heavy, but not incredibly heavy. This means that when you try to turn, the cars have a hard time turning. The game wants the player to try to understand and master the physics. The cars are also planted to the ground unless you jump off a ramp. You can really feel those heavy physics every time you turn or crash into someone. It's time to talk about the handling. Now, this is where things get interesting. You see, Circuit Superstars is a simcade racer leaning more towards the arcade side. The reason this game is leaning more towards the arcadey side of things is because the game in general feels arcadey. However, there are few elements taken from sim racers that make Circuit Superstars stand out. Before I talk about those few things that stand out, I need to talk about the handling properly. Like I've said before, cars in Circuit Superstars feel heavy and they are planted to the ground unless you jump off a ramp. But the handling in general is what you would expect from this kind of game. Grippy, not overly twitchy, and you can also feel the ABS and the traction control. Not to mention that every car type in the game handles notably different from each other. Because of this, some car types are heavier and some car types are lighter. Some cars are better at cutting corners and some cars are better at driving in a straight line. Some car types are good, some car types are bad, and some car types are somewhere in between. And this game covers almost every car type, from muscle cars, classic 60s, classic 80s, Formula 1, track racing, touring cars, and so much more. Speaking of car types, let's talk about the cars. Like I've said before, every car type handles notably different. And I feel like I don't need to explain that this also means that every car in the game handles notably different. Every car feels heavy and planted to the ground unless you jump off a ramp. And of course, some cars are heavier, some cars are lighter, some cars are better at driving in a straight line, some cars are better at turning, and so on and so forth. Every small car, every big car, every muscle car, every classic car, every F1 car, every truck, they all feel different, and I love it. I know what you're thinking, but Patrick, you already said all of this just a few minutes before. Yes, I know. I just didn't know what else to say here. Also, I need to pad the runtime on this video. Anyway, I also said that I would also talk about two things that stand out. Can you guess what those things are? Take a look at the bottom left corner of the screen and tell me in the comments down below, what do you see? Actually, you know what, you don't have to comment that, I'll just tell you what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the fuel and the tire durability. Let's start with the fuel. In Circuit Superstars you have a limited amount of fuel. When your car runs out of fuel, you drive very slowly, which means your opponents will easily overtake you. You can refuel by driving to your pit stop. However, if you want to get all of your fuel back, you have to stay in your pit stop for a few seconds. If you leave your pit stop too early, you won't get all of your fuel back, so you also need to keep that in mind when you're playing the game. When you're refueling in your pit stop, you're technically off the track, and your opponents are still technically on the track, which means that when you're refueling in your pit stop, your opponents can overtake you and you can lose your position. You can't just drive like Lightning McQueen, you have to stop for fuel eventually. There's strategy involved. Same thing goes for tire durability, but in a different way. In this game, tires are wearing out, and when they are too worn out, your car is sliding all over the place. But what happens when tire durability is at 0%? I don't know, I never got the tire durability to 0%, so I can't tell you. You can change your tires to brand new ones during the race, but you also have to go to your pit stop to change them. Same thing with refueling. Again, you can't be like Lightning McQueen and say no tires, just gas. You have to change your tires eventually. You know where this is going. Say it with me. There's strategy involved. What about the health bar? Well, I've talked about this before, so I'm just going to skip this part entirely. Now let's talk about the tracks and the track design. Circuit Superstars is a minimalistic game, and the tracks are also minimalistic. The tracks are basic, the track design is basic, the straight lines are basic, turns are basic. Everything about the tracks and the track design is just basic. Yes, some tracks have jumps and ramps you can jump off of, but there are only 2 tracks like this in the entire game. In other words, the tracks are basic and the track design is basic. Not much to say here. Normally this is the part of the video where I talk about the bad qualities of the game, but the game also has few more good qualities. Good qualities that I have to talk about. Firstly, while the tracks and the track design isn't challenging at all, the handling model makes up for it. How is that possible? Well, the cars can't turn. I mean, they can turn, but they can't turn. You know what I mean. You have to take every corner at a certain angle, And of course this angle changes with different cars. I like this because that way the game teaches the player that you can't just drive like a maniac. Secondly, refueling and tire durability add strategy to the game. And this is something I also really like. But why do I like it? Because it goes both ways. When your opponents are refueling and or changing tires, you can use it to your advantage and get first place by simply driving on the track. But when you are refueling and or changing tires, your opponents can use it to their advantage by driving on the track normally. And because of that you can lose your position. And then you have to play a game of catch up. I like this because you need to know when to refuel and when to change tires. Thirdly, the game has good amount of challenge. Your opponents are not pushovers, and they can outpace you really easily if you're not careful. I like this because you need to be good at the game. Okay, time for the bad qualities of the game. Firstly, when I was talking about the tracks and the track design, I said that the tracks and the track design is unchallenging. And, well, it is. That's the first bad quality. The tracks and the track design are just unchallenging. Secondly, some championships in the Grand Prix mode have too many laps. The Grand Prix mode is pretty much the career mode. All championships in this mode have 5 races, but some of those championships have 5 races that last 15 laps. That's way too much. And when you consider that you also have 1 lap of qualifications before every race, well, let's just say those championships are way too long. They really overstayed their welcome. And lastly, some difficulty modes are too difficult. Now hear me out, I like the difficulty in this game because your opponents aren't pushovers and they can outpace you really easily. However, this becomes a problem at higher difficulties. The game has 5 difficulty modes: Amateur, Pro-Am, Pro, Master, and Superstar. On Amateur and Pro-Am the game is difficult but also possible to complete. But starting from the Pro difficulty, the cars are way too fast and probably also have rubber banding from what I've noticed, so winning events is really hard on those difficulties. Before recording this footage I was playing on the Pro difficulty. I mean, come on. You think that a guy that calls himself PatrykThePro wouldn't pick Pro difficulty? Well, I did pick the Pro difficulty off camera and I was struggling. And because I wanted to have good footage, I decided to lower down the difficulty and I was playing on Pro-Am. But why did I lower the difficulty? Well, I think you already know what I think about rubber band AI. In conclusion, indie racing games deserve more love, and Circuit Superstars is one of those indie racing games that deserve more love. I can easily recommend this game to every racing game fan out there. With beautiful minimalistic graphics, good physics and good handling, you can easily become a circuit superstar by playing this game.
But that pretty much sums up everything I wanted to say in this analysis video. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.
Just me.